on the brutal, wind-scorched surface of Vernok 3, where every creature evolved to survive extinction-level storms and predation cycles. The most dangerous species in the spiral arm gathered for their once-in-a-decade tradition. The predator conclave. Fur glistened under twin suns. Mandibles clicked in irritation. Acidic saliva steamed against the volcanic air. No diplomats here. No compromise. Only dominance, growled in ancient tongues. They came from 200 predator cultures, apex species, ruling their ecosystems and sectors through tooth, fang, or superior tactics. From the spine wolves of Varix to the chloroblade wasps of Keshurin, every being here had earned its place through blood and conquest. But this year, the Conclave faced a new kind of threat. Not a stronger predator, not a rival empire, but something far more confusing. Why? The Zarati queen hissed, her obsidian scales twitching. Do our young keep imprinting on humans? The chamber stirred. Growls rolled through the assembly. Even the air tasted uneasy. The Thal Alpha stood next, his horns etched with battle code. It's not just yours, he said, voice like cracking stone. Our cubs hum their songs, with their colors. Some refuse the hunt unless a human observes. Another warlord from the blood thickets of Visker raised her claws. Our larvae mimic human phrases. Show empathy. Empathy. The room erupted. One species proposed sanctions against Earth. Another demanded a communication blockade. One radical diplomat barked for genetic quarantine protocols. Still, across species, across stars, the pattern held. Their young didn't fear humans. They admired them. They imitated them. And they bonded to them. No one knew why. Not the xenolinguists. Not the imprint psychologists. Not the Dominion-level behavioral AIs. Just an uncomfortable truth. Predator cubs preferred humans over their own kind. The Zarati queen hissed again, this time with venom behind her voice. We are the bloodline apex. We are the culmination of claw and code. And yet they choose them. The silence that followed was dangerous. Hungry, ready to be turned into declarations of war. Until one voice, deep, old, and slow, echoed from the shadows of the hall. It belonged to Tharkal, elder matron of the devourer brood of Salenthus, a being older than half the council species, wrapped in layered bone silk and memory scars. She said nothing at first, only stepped forward, claws clicking lightly on the blackstone floor. When she spoke, her voice was not loud, but it cut through the chamber like a scalpel. We asked the same question once, until our cub was threatened, and a human was near. Every predator in the conclave turned. Even the Thal Alpha dropped his jaw slightly. You have an explanation? Someone barked. No, said Tharkal. I have a story, and a warning. Her eyes, impossibly ancient, glinted. Let me tell you what happened on Tethranine, when we sent our youngling to hunt alone, when it was ambushed, and when a human, a small, soft, unarmed human, was the only other creature nearby. She paused, letting silence thicken. And what that human became when they heard a cub scream. No one moved. No one interrupted. Because every predator knows. When an old killer tells a story, you listen. And across the spiral arm, an unspoken question clawed its way into the hearts of every dominant species. What have we created when even the fiercest young ones choose the soft ones? The story was about to begin, and no one would leave unchanged. The Korlax are not gentle. Born into blood-slick dens beneath sulfur skies, their young emerge already growling, teeth sharp, instincts tuned to combat. By the third cycle, they stalk smaller prey. By the fifth, they are tested in the blood trial, a rite that ends in scars, trophies, or death. They do not sing lullabies. They teach discipline by bite pressure. They show love through resistance drills. So when the Korlax High Clutch agreed to a diplomatic juvenile exchange program with the Terrans for cultural observation, they expected failure. They sent a cub, a runt barely past first molt, named Lurek, just to prove a point. Earth, with its blue skies and oxygen-thick air, was too soft. Humans were talkative, inefficient, sentimental. No threat, no structure. Let him see how weak they are, the elders scoffed. He will return hungry to prove them obsolete. They assigned him a diplomatic monitor. Her name was Amara Singh. She was not a general, not a soldier. She was a preschool teacher. From Luna Colony, Earth's low-grav early education sector. Amara wore sweaters with cartoon dinosaurs. She spoke in calm tones. She baked. The Korlax thought it a joke. They were wrong. 6 planetary cycles later, Lurek returned. Not in disgrace. Not in triumph. Just different. He bowed gently to the elders. Not submissively. Respectfully. He answered every question, but without growling. He presented drawings. Simple ones, stick figures of blue planet, 2 suns, 1 small human with large Korlax claws holding her hand. He sang a song. About stars. The elders froze. Their jaws clenched. One of them, War Elder Trask, leapt forward, inspecting the youngling's teeth. Still sharp, still deadly, but unused. His instincts are dull. Trask roared. He has not hunted in cycles. Another elder reviewed his biostat logs. Physical development, excellent. Bone mass, increased. Reflex speed, doubled. But aggression index? Down 72%. They summoned the human. Amara Singh arrived in a cargo transport she piloted herself. She stepped out in her sweater, this one with tiny stars across the collar. The elders expected apology. Instead, she waved and handed them cookies. Chocolate chip. Lurek help. The silence could have cracked stone. Elder Thurn finally stepped forward, claws twitching. You have softened our cub. Amara's smile didn't falter. I taught him to speak before he strikes. To ask before he takes. He is Korlax. He is supposed to take. Amara tilted her head. And now he knows when not to. They turned to Lurek. Do you feel weaker? Thurn demanded. Lurek paused. Then he said, softly, I feel clearer. He stepped beside Amara. She rested a hand on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He leaned in. He still knows how to bite, she added. I just taught him when it matters. Later, in private, Elder Thurn asked her, why did you not fear him? Amara poured tea. He was angry, confused, strong, but he was also lonely. He could have killed you. He nearly did. Once. When I took away a toy he was using to menace the others. And you still kept him? I held him. Until he cried. Then we cleaned the mess together. Thurn stared. You touched him? During rage? I do it with human children all the time. When the memory scribes reviewed Lurek's logs, they saw something stranger than aggression loss. They saw increased strategic empathy, better pack communication, faster moral reasoning, artistic skill development, emotional fluency in 3 species. The elders didn't know what to make of it. This wasn't weakness. It wasn't strength either. It was something new, and it terrified them. One day, Lurek approached the high clutch directly. He knelt, not from submission, but respect. He said, we are strong. I will always be Korlax. But she taught me that strength without choice is just instinct. And instinct without understanding is just fear wearing teeth. The chamber fell silent. Lurek looked up. I am still Predator, he said. Then he opened his arms and hugged Elder Thurn. Carefully, without claws. The conclave audience listened in stunned silence as Tharkal, the ancient storyteller, finished the tale. One of the warlords hissed, You're telling us that kindness made your cub stronger? No, she said. I'm telling you that choice did. Another predator leaned forward. But they're soft. They cry. Tharkal nodded. Yes, but when their young cry, the entire species listens. She looked at them, old eyes fierce. That is why our cubs imprint on them. Because even when humans cannot win with strength, they fight like every child's future is worth the stars. The Drenari Ridge was considered moderate risk in the exchange program guidelines. Rocky terrain, atmospheric pressure just tolerable for unarmored Terran lungs, with local fauna marked as curious, not hostile. Amara insisted on joining the field visit, not as a chaperone, just to walk with them. Children learn more under sky than ceiling, she told the security chief, who reluctantly approved. Let them feel the world breathe. The cubs, 6 Korlax, 2 Vernari twins, and 1 Tellin scalehopper, climbed rocks and argued over the best shape for a cloud. Lurek stayed close to Amara, still adjusting to the strange pull of Earth-style gravity boots. He sketched plants with surprising delicacy, occasionally showing her leaves with serrated edges and whispering their native names. The sky was gentle, until it wasn't. It happened fast. A shadow, a tremor in the stone, a vibration that silenced birds mid-flight. Then came the roar. It didn't echo. It crushed. A Drenari ridgeback, massive, territorial, covered in ceramite-scaled hide, tore out from the ravine. Nostrils flared, tusks slick with drool and old blood. Over 400 kilograms of coiled muscle and instinct, it charged toward the ridge path, straight toward the children. The security team, armed, trained veteran, froze. Then scattered. Not a cowardice. Out of calculation. They had no time. No position. No clear shot. Only Amara moved forward. No weapon. No armor. Just her sweater, now streaked with dust. She didn't run. She placed herself between the beast and the cubs. One hand held behind her, shielding Lurek. The other extended outward, palm up, as if greeting a stray dog, as if daring the universe to break something in front of her. The beast roared again. Stone cracked. Children screamed. Amara did not. What she did was stranger. She stepped forward, and she spoke. Not in English, not in Korlax, not in any known tongue, but in something deeper, older. A voice that didn't rise in pitch, but in weight. A tone that didn't command authority. It became it. No. Just one word, spoken like it had teeth. And for a moment, the predator, this apex tank of bone and instinct, hesitated. It wasn't reason. It wasn't magic. It was command without violence. But instinct is heavy. The hesitation passed. The ridgeback charged. Amara didn't flinch. She screamed again, not in fear but in rage. A primal thing. Not guttural, not high-pitched. Just sound crafted into a shape meant to be obeyed. It wasn't a roar. It was language with fangs. The kind of sound that reminded the body it came from a species that had once burned entire forests to protect their young. The beast veered at the last second, claws skidding on rock, crashing into a boulder with bone-snapping force. Then limped away, bleeding, defeated, and very, very afraid. The security team returned 90 seconds later. They found the children huddled behind her. Lurek had his arms around two of the smaller ones. And Amara? Still standing, breathing hard, shoulders squared, eyes wet, voice soft. It's okay, babies. You're safe now. They took her to medical. Bruised, shaken, unharmed. Asked what she was thinking. She just said, I've seen worse tantrums in a sugar crash. That one just had tusks. Lurek didn't leave her side for 3 days. He didn't speak. He just stayed, watching, processing, learning. Word spread, not across Earth, across the Apex networks. Military, scientific, cultural. Footage leaked, grainy, shaky reel. A human teacher, defying a ridgeback with her body and voice. It broke algorithms. It rewrote threat assessments. It whispered into predator bloodlines a terrible, wondrous question. If they can scare off monsters without weapons, what are they when armed? But that wasn't the question the young were asking. They weren't wondering about guns. They were drawing pictures of a human holding out a hand, of a predator backing away, of a voice that roared no louder than fear. And in those drawings, across the spiral arm, one shape appeared again and again. A child behind that human, smiling, safe. The Korlax don't weep. Not by tradition, not by biology. Their tear ducts closed generations ago in the crucible of war and survival. Emotion, they taught, is carved into ritual, not water. Mourning is sung. Rage is burned. Joy is etched in tooth and blade. But the cubs do. They're still small, still growing, still soft where the world hasn't hardened them yet. And when the footage of Amara Singh shielding Lurek is replayed across the Korlax homeworld, the young don't chant. They don't roar. They cry. Lurek refuses to return. Not in defiance, not in rebellion, but in grief. Not for what he's lost, but for what he's gained and now fears to lose. Safety, not the kind enforced with teeth and code blades, but the kind made of quiet rooms and soft hands and people who ask, "Are you okay?" and mean it. His guardians try to remind him of his destiny. You are Korlax. You are Clawborn. But Lurek only replies, I know. I just want to stay where the claws are used to hold, too. The elders convene. They gather in the Grand Redoubt, a stone hall that predates atmospheric stabilization, lined with bones of predators from 3 extinctions ago. They review the footage. Not the raw version, the dissected one. Frame by frame. Slowed. Enhanced. Analyzed. Every micro-expression of the human. Every shift in her stance. Every beat of the child's heart. Visible in thermal overlay. They search for signs of tactical assessment. For instinctual defense patterns. For evidence that this was calculated survival. They find none. What they find is certainty. Not bravado. Not dominance. Just an unwavering truth in human posture. She did not move because she expected to survive. She moved because the child must. That was the equation. That was the only outcome allowed. Not because it earned her honor. Not because it would bring her reward. But because at that moment, that child was hers. By choice. One elder, the High Fong herself, breaks silence. She watches the moment where the beast charges. Where Amara steps forward. Where she raises her hand, not to strike, but to shield. And the High Fong whispers. She put herself in harm's way for another species cub. No bond, no blood, no glory. Another elder, voice low, adds, to us, that's madness. To her, it's Tuesday. And suddenly, the mystery isn't a mystery anymore. The question that burned through the predator assembly like wildfire, why do our young imprint on humans, melts away, because they see it now, in that grainy footage, in that unarmored woman, in that singular moment of violent grace. Humans don't protect to dominate. They protect because they've chosen you. And when a human chooses you, they will burn the stars to keep you safe. Lurex drawings change. No longer just flowers and landscapes. Now they show hands. Open, reaching, not clawed, not curled in fists, but ready to catch, to hold, to lift. And the Corlax elders realize. It's not that their cub is becoming less Corlax. It's that he's becoming more. More than teeth and bone. More than the ritual of conquest. He is remembering something ancient. A feeling older than rage. Kindness. The thing they forgot when they chose survival over softness. The High Fong issues a statement. It's not long. It's not flowery. Corlax don't use metaphor. Just fact. The child may stay. The teacher is welcome. We will observe. And we will learn. In time, the cubs return to their trials. Their claws sharpen. Their instincts hone. But one change lingers. When one of them falls in sparring, the others reach out. Not to mock. Not to strike. But to help them stand. Not because they were taught. Because they saw. And they remember. Because memory, once seated in blood, is not easily erased. Even by time. Even by tradition. Even by fear. Dozens of apex species convened in sterile labs, academic towers, orbital platforms surrounded by moons of data and centuries of arrogance. The Predator Assembly had demanded answers, and the scientists, ethologists, xenopsychologists, imprint engineers delivered them. Reluctantly at first, then urgently. The results were consistent, disturbingly so, across 47 species of predator-class younglings. Cubs entered deeper, more stable sleep cycles when exposed to human scent samples. Stress vocalizations dropped by 83% when a human heartbeat was played over environmental speakers. When injured, cubs crawled not to their own kind, but to the nearest Terran. Even more unnerving, they started singing. Terran lullabies. Off-key, mismatched, but the melodies were there. Some with words, some just hums. But always human. One test involved a young Faraxi, jawed, six-limbed, with hunting instincts that activated 2 weeks after birth. The cub was placed in an enclosure with 2 holograms, one of its biological mother, rendered in perfect detail, and one of Amara Singh. The cub blinked once, then waddled toward the human image. No hesitation. It curled into the simulation and purred. Researchers recalibrated the test. Reduced scent markers. Reduced light cues. It didn't matter. Every single cub, no matter the species, made the same choice. One elder scientist, a Zelthi neurobiologist with 3 academic tentacles and 0 tolerance for error, finally said aloud, what everyone was thinking. This isn't imprint confusion. This is preference. They tried to isolate why. Terran physiology? Inconclusive. Vocal tone? Too varied. Pheromones? Surprisingly neutral. Protective instinct? Elevated, but not exceptional. The answer didn't seem to be what humans were. It was how they were. One researcher, a Grell veteran with cybernetic empathy implants, summarized it best during a cross-species symposium. Humans are not soft. They're not weak. They're the only species that makes predators feel safe. The assembly chambers went silent. Not out of fear, but realization. They've been asking the wrong question. Not, why do our cubs choose humans? But, how do we forget what safety looks like? They rewound the footage from Drenari Ridge again. Not the charge. Not the scream. The aftermath. Amaran kneeling, bloodied but upright, whispering to terrified young across species lines. You're okay. I've got you. You're safe now. That phrase, you're safe now, began appearing across predator enclaves, etched into training walls, painted over dens, translated into every language known to the assembly. Because for all their brutal strength, these species of claw and fang and thermal vision, they had forgotten how to feel safe. Humans hadn't, even after plagues, even after wars and collapse, even after they lost half their species to their own disasters. They still built things like preschools, lullabies, blankets that smelled like mom, not because they denied danger, but because they knew its weight and built shelters anyway. Back on Vernok 3, one Apex counselor watched her own cub sleep for the first time in days. The human exchange teacher had placed a small woven stuffed animal beside him. Not a training tool, not a dominance object, just comfort. The cub clutched it with his 3 talons, relaxed his breathing, and sighed. And the counselor, for the first time in decades, sat down and wept. Because she had no idea what her sun sign meant. But she knew what it felt like. It felt like safety. And they'd been wrong to treat it as weakness. It wasn't weakness. It was the thing they were fighting for all along, and forgot how to name. It began with a book. A Terran child-rearing manual, standard issue for teachers, medics, foster parents, was translated into 19 apex predator dialects by an ambitious xenolinguist. She wanted to study comparative nurturing theory. Instead, she lit a fire. The contents horrified them. No hitting, no abandonment, no forced pain for dominance. Do not raise your voice in anger. Kneel. Make eye contact. Speak truthfully, even when afraid. Set boundaries, but hold space. A child is not prey. A child is a future. To the apex species, raised by traditions of trial, blood, and strength. The words read like sacrilege. One general declared, "This is a tactical document, a soft logic infiltration technique." A war matron accused it of being psychological sabotage. But others didn't speak. They just read, and reread, and remembered. The Thal Alpha placed the manual on a public memorial stone. He didn't say why, but for the first time in known record, he was seen placing his paw, gently, on a sleeping cub's back. Then the incident happened. The proof. A rogue war clan, fringe separatists from the Zerati bloodline, raided a hybrid colony school on Threx, too. They took 12 cubs, cross-species, all with human caregivers. No demands, no broadcast, just silence. Local militaries were summoned. The Predator Assembly began drafting retaliatory strikes, extraction plans, evacuation routes, containment orders. But someone else arrived first. Her name was Marin Holtz. Terran, former field medic, current trauma counselor, age 63. No weapons, no escort, just her emergency satchel, a scanner, and a Saturn pattern shawl. She entered the stronghold alone, walked straight into a den of war-hardened predators, ritual-scarred and sworn to extinction oaths. She did not speak. She did not plead. She sang. It was not a song of war, not anthem or command. It was a lullaby, a soft, looping tune passed down through 3 generations of Earth's healing guilds. Hush now, tiny fire. The world is large, but you are known. You are safe. You are seen. Come home. One by one, the cubs crawled from their cells. Some limped. Some cried. Some simply stared. They moved to her voice like gravity. And she didn't stop singing, not once, as she walked them out of the fortress. The guards, trained killers, stood frozen, not out of fear, but memory. When extraction forces arrived, they found her outside, covered in dust, holding hands with a Zerati runt and a Grell scatterling, still humming. Inside, the war clan was in chaos, but there was no resistance, just silence, and one warrior, kneeling, claws bloodied, trembling. He had not struck anyone. He had turned his claws inward, repeatedly, murmuring the same phrase. I remembered what my mother never gave me. The footage spread in hours. So did the manual. What began as a study became a doctrine. Predator packs rewrote their training codes, not because of defeat, because they saw the unthinkable. A human walked unarmed into a den of killers and tamed nothing. She simply loved without fear. And the killers laid down their weapons, not in shame, in grief, because they realized, maybe for the first time, they had always wanted to be held like that too. Across Predator worlds, statues rose, not of warriors, but of humans kneeling, arms open, not conquering, not resisting, just there. The apex began telling stories to their young. If the storm comes and your claws fail, find the Terran. They won't fight for you. They'll make you brave enough to survive. And in one hidden archive deep beneath the assembly chambers, an old Zerati historian revised the sacred codex of the hunt. He scratched out a single line, the one that read, "Only the strong endure." And beneath it, in fresh ink, he wrote, "Only the chosen protect what chooses them back." Across the galaxy, something strange begins to happen. Protocols shift. Ancient traditions, carved in war and ritual, quietly adapt. The predator species, who once taught their young through trial and pain, begin issuing a new directive. If your cub is in danger, give it to a human. It sounds like myth, a fable, but it spreads like instinct, not through official channels, through stories. Shared at market stalls, whispered in war dens, repeated by cubs at play. The Terran will keep you safe. Caretaker academies begin opening slots for Terran volunteers. Every species wants them. The assembly scrambles to build infrastructure, secure habitats, translation implants, adaptive cradles. Still, the demand far outpaces supply. Applications arrive by the millions, because even the fiercest warriors now agree. A Terran does not abandon the child. And when asked why, when predator scholars dissect the logic, examine the behavior, they all arrive at the same conclusion. It's not because humans are perfect. Far from it. It's because they choose, over and over, to be better, even when it hurts, even when it costs them everything. Amara Singh becomes more than a name. She becomes a symbol, honor-kin to 3 predator clans, protector of the small. She never asked for the title. She continues teaching, wrapping lunches, singing lullabies. But her name is whispered in reverence across the stars. On the great cliffs of Theroin, a sacred site reserved only for warriors who saved entire bloodlines. Her likeness is carved in stone. The artists ask her to wear battle armor. She refuses. Instead, they sculpt her as she was that day. One hand out, one child behind her, hair windblown, eyes unwavering. And beneath it, in every major predator script, I stood between the world and the child. That's all. No war medals. No bloodline claim. Just truth. Years pass. Peace does not come easily, but it comes more often. Predator species, those who once believed only blood built strength, begin learning about something else. Bond, care, deliberate mercy. And every time a youngling sings an earth song, every time a cub curls up beside a human without fear, it feels like a tiny revolution. Then one day it happens. The storm ship Caressa Fong lands outside Luna Colony's southern fields. A figure steps out, armored, tall, regal, Corlax grown, but different. Stronger, yes, but also gentler. He walks with purpose, his stride lined with command. Amara, tending her garden, looks up. She drops her trowel, tears already in her eyes. Lurek, not the cub who once bit crayons and tried to snarl at butterflies. Not the student who cried when he learned what extinction meant. He's a leader now, commander of the Claw Circle, envoy to the Predator Assembly, heir to one of the oldest bloodlines in Korlak's memory. He doesn't bow. He runs, straight into her arms, and she catches him, the same way she always did, like he never stopped needing her. In that moment, every clan representative present, Thal, Zarati, Bron, and more kneel, not in ceremony, not in submission, in understanding, because this human did not train their leader. She raised him, and he chose her back. Later that night, beside the fire pits, Lurek speaks. She is not of my species. She did not bleed for my wars. She held no blade, claimed no glory. But she gave me a thing no right could, the freedom to grow without fear. He turns to her, kneels, and speaks the old phrase. Mother Heart. Amara places a hand on his cheek. You always were. From that day forward, Mother Heart becomes a sacred title across predator cultures, not given to those who birth, given to those who choose to protect the small, the weak, the learning, with patience and love. Some warriors still argue tradition, still shout about lost strength, but others, those who knelt, look at them and say, you only ever taught survival. The Terrans taught us to live. The great conclave reconvenes on the summit plains of Vernok 3. The air is heavy with heat and legacy, scorched stone, scent of past challenges, and echoes of declarations that shaped entire sectors. Every 10 cycles they gather. The predators, the apex species, the warriors born of Fong, Talon, Blade, Venom. But this time, there is no blood trial, no roaring debates, no clashing philosophies, only silence. And in the center of that silence, a datapad. One single line etched into its glowing surface. Where cubs dwell, humans shall walk beside. It's called the Human Entrustment Accord. It is passed, unanimously. No votes, no amendments, no objections. Because now, finally, the apex species of the galaxy understand. It was never about strength, not the kind they had always revered, anyway. It was never about dominance, not about hierarchy or fear or claw-first diplomacy. No, it was something older, something deeper, something forgotten in the rush to sharpen their young for survival. The humans remembered it, instinctively. They were not the strongest species, not by bone density or bite force, not by neural complexity or planetary conquest. They were not immune to war, nor strangers to pain. And yet, they stood between the cub and the world. Every time, not because of treaty, not because of alliance, but because someone had to, and when it came time to choose, time to move or to flee, to attack or to shield, humans placed themselves in the path of danger. Soft, breakable, defiant. A Thal general once called them the fragile madness. He meant it as an insult. Now, it is etched into his tombstone with reverence. They learned it slowly, these predator empires. Through stories, through research, through shared awe. The cubs chose first, before the scientists, before the strategists, before the warriors could understand. The young knew. Instinct does not argue. And what the cubs recognized, what they saw in the Terrans, was not power. It was presence. The humans see them, not as heirs of domination, not as tools to be honed, but as children, messy, afraid, worthy. So now across the galaxy, human caregivers are standard in every cross-species academy. Predator clans design nursery chambers around Earth music frequencies. Entire battle doctrines are restructured, not for efficiency, but for empathy, because a new truth is known. You cannot raise a protector through fear. You can only raise a protector by being one. The Korlaks no longer fear softness. They teach it, gently, fiercely, like fire that warms without burning. The Braun War, mothers recite Terran lullabies before hunts. The Zarati forge new armor shapes, rounded, unthreatening, for their younger guards, calling them guardians of the quiet. And in the heart of all this change stands one philosophy, one unshakable revelation. Humans protect, not because they can, but because they will, without need for thanks, without promise of survival. And so the assembly doesn't vote. They remember. They remember the incident. They remember Mara Singh and the cub she shielded. They remember the medic who sang in the dark and brought home 12 children. They remember every Terran who chose protection over power. One Tharn elder puts it best. Standing at the edge of the final summit, claws folded behind his back, voice deep with awe, in a galaxy of teeth, is the soft hand that frightens me most. And then, with something like hope, because it is the only one I trust to hold the future. Now, in every predator language, a new proverb is taught. When the stars fall, find the Terran, and you will rise again. No temples are built, no statues carved beyond the cliffs of Theruin, because humans never asked for worship. They asked only to help. And so the galaxy answers in the only way that feels right. They trust them with their children. One by one, across thousands of worlds, cubs of every species are tucked into beds woven by Terran hands. And the last sound they hear before sleep? Not alarms, not growls, but a voice, soft and certain, whispering, "You are safe. I'm right here." And somewhere in that comfort, in that terrifying, fragile hope, the galaxy becomes something else. Not tamed, not pacified, but healed. Because for the first time since the stars were born, the fiercest beings in the known universe learn to purr.